And you did the arrangements,
In those days, yes. Well, there wasn't an awful lot to do. We were only 5. I led from the drums and vocals. I sang, too, with the little group, which helped to give it its distinctive quality, I think.
You say distinctive. I read one critic who described your voice as a foghorn in distress.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I had postcards from listeners in England who have said, we like your music, we like your speaking, but for God's sake, do not use that foghorn. But that, unfortunately, is the only one I have.
Mamma, yo quiero, mamma, yo quiero, mamma, yo quiero aprender cómo se brasa, cómo se piensa, cómo se empieza a enamorar a una mujer. Mamá, 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 yo quiero que tú me digas que lo es que se debe hacer. Si hay que rogarla, después besarla y al fin pegarla pa' que empiece a querer. Mamá, 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 yo quiero, mamá, yo quiero, mamá, yo quiero, mamá. La chupeta, ay, la chupeta, ay, la chupeta porque tengo llorar. Mamá, 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 yo quiero, mamá, yo quiero, mamá, yo quiero, mamá. La chupeta, ay, la chupeta, ay, la chupeta porque tengo llorar.
An early recording of Edmundo's Rhumba band, and it was to hear that sort of music that people flocked to his club. Those who knew it in Regent Street in London still remember it with obvious affection and the warm and friendly atmosphere it had. It was glamorous, too, with members of the royal families regularly present. I asked Edmundo if he could explain the appeal.
When first we started playing there, we had a number of people who had come over from the continent as freedom fighters. You know what I mean? The Free Dutch and the Free French and the Free whatever it is. And these people helped to keep the club going and helped to appreciate and give me encouragement about as far as the music was concerned. We had not only the freedom people, but their bosses, their heads. You know, we would have people like Mr. Churchill there. We would have people like General Eisenhower. We would have the king of this and the duke of that and so on every night. And the one good thing about it, which I feel I should pat myself on the back for, we never used their coming to the club for publicity purposes. Oh yes, we had everybody you can think of, every single person. Sinatra, Clark Gable, and our royal family too. You name them and I'll tell you exactly where they sat.
Now, I've heard it said, Edmundo, that you became much more than just a band leader to them. You became very much a friend, a confidant. Many people, in fact, turned to you for suggestions, for advice, for friendship.
Yes, I feel that was due to the fact that I was and still am conscious of all the help I have had, you see, because all I have told you has happened, but don't think it happened without help, you know. A number of people helped me, and a number of people went out of their way to help me without knowing whether I was worthy of help or not. In fact, they took a chance. So when I got the opportunity to help people, I was more than glad to help.
And one person who glows with pride over his popularity and generosity is Edmundo's secretary, Mrs. B. She's known as Mrs. B, just that, throughout the whole musical world, for she's worked alongside Edmundo and all those frilly shirts for almost a quarter of a century. Prized from her typewriter, she told me,
I think he's a terrific person. Probably because of 22 years of happy working with him. That's his expression, not mine. He doesn't want anyone to work for him. He wants everyone to work with him. So maybe that's the answer. He has this bigness, not only physically, but within himself. He's a big person, and he is able to give the people that work with him the feeling that they are doing the job of work as well as he. He's the first to admit that he couldn't have done this on his own. He has his musicians who've been with him for 1,000 years, as he said. He doesn't like changes in his staff. and his staff don't like changing. It's as simple as that.
Of course, it's not that simple. Edmundo's success has entailed unremitting effort, continual drive for years and years. But he, too, does believe with an impressive simplicity that individuals matter.
We all like to feel wanted, don't we? And the average person likes to think that his coming to the club made a difference to me. And I went out of my way to make him feel that we were, in fact, waiting for him. And I had the little trick of being able to play his favorite tune the moment he came in, which would make him realize that he was more than welcome.
And that, the Wedding Samba, was one of Edmundo's biggest hits, not only in this country, but abroad as well. And did you know, by the way, that when Princess Elizabeth, as she then was, first went dancing in public, it was to the music of the Edmundo Ros Orchestra, because he insisted on a very high, indeed a royal, standard of behavior in that club of his.
I was very strict. I didn't allow people to be improperly dressed. I didn't allow ladies in trousers, suits, which is a thing I would have had to have allowed now because it's part of the scene. I didn't allow people to smoke pipes before they'd had their dinner. And a lot of what now would be nonsense, if you know what I mean.
I read that King Hussein had to come back and apologize that one of the members of his party wasn't wearing a tie on one occasion.
Would you like to hear who that was? Peter O'Toole. Mind you, I'm not saying I was right, but that's how I lived at the time. I have certainly climbed down a lot since then, but that's how I used to be.
Do you feel you were perhaps a little high and mighty?
Now, on taking, in retrospect, I feel I could have been a little more tolerant. But you see, I wasn't secure. I was very insecure, you see. In fact, I was less secure than I am now. So as a result of that, you found yourself doing all kinds of things that were, you think would have helped, you know. Now I am relaxed. Now I am not afraid anymore, if you see what I mean. I have now realized that it's not as important as you used to think it was. And having grown as old as I am, I have now been able to look back and see that many of the things that I thought meant a hell of a lot really do not mean very much.
Sadly, our inflated times caught up with the fast-moving samba beat of clubland, and Edmundo decided to close his club. But his musicians refused to leave him. Some have been part of his band for 30 years. So the Latin American rhythms sound on many, many records, of course, for he sold several millions of those, and also in the frilly-shirted flesh.
We are now playing many, many concerts. We go all over the country. We seem to have been taken up by the Ministry of Culture, I think, and we go to many of these places where the residents of the towns are entertained by the council, and we play concerts. We do it on a commercial basis and also on an educational and instructional basis. We have been as far as to go to certain schools, secondary schools, to present concerts and so on.
And you're also touring abroad, of course, with concert tours to Japan and so on.
Yes, well, that is where the money is, you see. We sell many records in Japan, and we sell many records on the continent, so wherever the records are sold, we are advised to go along.
Edmundo, do you ever look back to those heydays, those high days of your club, and those glittering people and the excitement of your whole career, and perhaps feel a little nostalgic for them?
Well, to be honest, there are certain nights that I do. Certain nights when I have nothing to do with the orchestra and there is nothing good on television. I get slightly sort of nostalgic, but to be honest, I wouldn't go back to it, if you see what I mean.
I love you, that's what my heart is saying, while the band is playing the Cuban love song. I love you for all the joys you brought me, that tender night you taught me the Cuban love song. One melody will always fill my heart, and it will linger there while we are apart. I love you with such a tender passion that only you can fashion the Cuban love song. Such a tender passion that only you can fashion the Cuban love song.
Well, there you are. That portrait of Edmundo Ros was written and introduced by Nancy Wise, and the production was by John Knight.